to this first session under the track Financing Energy Efficiency for the Public Sector. My name is Nathalie Clicquot. I'm a project advisor working for the Life Clean Energy Transition and Climate Unit at CINEA, the European Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency. We manage a wealth of programs supporting the Green Deal, and in particular the LIFE program. And if you want to learn more about the LIFE program, and in particular the new sub-program on the clean energy transition, I do invite you to visit the LIFE stand tomorrow at the virtual fair, or to take part in the info session tomorrow afternoon also at 2:30 p.m. We will talk during this session of the energy efficiency project development for South Attica project, PRODESA. But before we start, a few ground rules. Please do keep your microphone muted unless the moderator, that's me, give you the floor. And also other important features that you can access with some buttons on the Zoom application. To ask a speaker a question, I would kindly ask you to write the question in the chat. Actually, we will organize the session with first the presentation, and then later on you get the opportunity to ask your question via the chat for a question and answer session towards the end. So the project we want to talk about today, PRODESA, is actually a very inspiring example of how you can pool resources of municipalities and actually try to develop a nice and easy to finance project pipeline, bundling projects across 7 municipalities in Greece, and also exploring how you can use different options for financing, such as public and private financing. And to discuss this project, we have with us 2 experts that are heavily involved in the project. Eva Athanassakou, who works with a partner at the UDT Energy and Environmental Design, and also Argyro Yakoumi, who is a senior researcher and project leader at the Greek Center for Renewable Energy Sources and Saving. You both been involved very deeply in the project, and you will tell us more about how easy or challenging it is to work with these municipalities to develop around 20 million investments for energy efficiency. Without further ado, I give you the floor, Eva.
Thank you very much, Nathalie. Just to wrap up, it is hard. It is difficult and very challenging, but it is very rewarding as well, because of the results. So I'll share the presentation with my colleague Yakoumi, as Nathalie Clicquot said, and I will start with to give you an idea of the PRODESA in a nutshell. Can I have the next slide, please? So PRODESA assists 7 municipalities located in the Athens Metropolitan Area to develop, showcase energy efficiency projects in 116 municipal buildings and in street lighting in an area comprising 22,000 luminaires. The total investment is 20 million. Also, PRODESA is assisting the municipalities to bundle energy efficiency interventions into larger projects and pooling financing resources and leveraging private investments through energy performance contracting. PRODESA is financed by the Project Development Assistance Instrument of the Horizon 2020. Next slide, please. Next, please. Yeah. So a few words for the consortium. 5 municipalities are developing and implementing energy efficiency projects. 2 municipalities are participating as replicators, and they are producing also their plans and pipeline of projects. The Central Union of Municipalities of Greece supports the dissemination activities. Next, please. And there are also 5 partners, private and public, that provide legal, technical, and financial support to the municipalities. Next, please. But why PRODESA? PRODESA is contributing to resolving barriers such as lack of financing of project development, This is a common barrier for all municipalities across Europe, but for Greece, it's even more pronounced because due to the economic crisis, the municipalities were and are still allocating resources to more pressing needs like social needs, and investing in energy efficiency was seen as a secondary priority. So PRODESA supports the project development for these municipalities, but also through the tools and the examples that is producing, it facilitates the project development for the other Greek municipalities. And by replicating the PRODESA's results, they can reduce effort, time, and therefore budget. So the second barrier that the ESCO market is, the second barrier is that the ESCO market in Greece is at a very early stage. There are very few examples of energy performance contracting, and there is not any example of large-scale public in public buildings. So PRODESA will result in real large-scale examples with data evidence that will increase confidence in energy performance contracting and facilitating thus the deployment of the ESCO market. The third barrier is associated with the reluctance of the decision-making municipal employees. A reluctance in adopting new paths really, and especially if these new paths are relevant to financing mechanisms. So PRODESA develops examples of new approaches and templates of tender documents that support the implementation and replication of the proposed new financing mechanisms. Next, please. But how we have worked and how did we go about it? The project has started with three main pillars, three main activities. The first one, of course, is the design of the investments, the development of the first development of the investments. This has been done through open tenders, but the project has produced a tender document template with specifications and terms to ensure that the resulting investments are attractive to private financing, but also eligible for public funding. I will come back later to this. Simultaneously, a comparative assessment of the available financing instruments was carried out by mapping all the instruments and assessing them in order to select the most suitable complementary financing resources for our financing schemes. And the third pillar brings together in a dialogue both parties, the public and the private, the municipalities and the ESCOs, to discuss the perceived risks and build trust among them. This was very important because of the market, that it is at a very early stage. Also, the purpose of this dialogue was to make known the investments to the ESCOs, receive their reaction, and make, if necessary, some small modifications in order to ensure a wider participation in the implementation tenders later on. Based on these results, based on the results of these activities, we proceeded with the project bundling, the financial engineering, and the preparation of the tender documents, aiming at making sizable projects and maximizing private financing. And then, of course, it's the launching of the implementation tenders and the sign of the contracts. Along the duration of the project, we carried out capacity building activities, not only for the PRODESA municipalities, but for a network of 30 municipalities that are receiving coaching for the development of their project pipelines. Next, please. But what are the investments we have developed? Next, please. I will start with presenting the buildings. The main building types are schools, office buildings, cultural centers, and most of them are 30 years old, above 30 years old. So they need improvements for their thermal protection, and their heating systems are inefficient and need a replacement. And very few of them, only a couple of them, have integrated renewable energy sources. Next, please. So the concept of the energy efficiency design that was included in the design tenders was to replace the current oil and gas burning heating systems with heat pumps and use on-grid rooftop photovoltaic systems to supply green electricity. In other words, we tried to decarbonize the heating systems of these buildings. The energy efficiency interventions as resulted from the design are shown on the slide. You can see them in the small images there. Overall, we have achieved an improvement of 65 to 70%. 40% is due to the energy efficiency interventions, and 45 to 55% of the remaining load is covered by PV electricity. Next, please. Regarding the street lighting energy efficiency interventions, 3 municipalities undertook such projects in an area, as I said, comprising 22,000 luminaires, which have been changed, replaced with LED luminaires and a management system. The overall primary energy savings achieved are approximately 63%. Next, please. The expected energy impact, as you can see, is about 69% primary energy savings, reduction of the current energy consumption, 6.9 megawatt hours per year of renewable electricity produced, which is approximately 100% of what it is today. Also, we expect savings in CO2 emissions of about 18,000 tons per year. And our investments are expected to result in 330 new jobs. Next, please. Okay, but what about the bundling of the projects and the bundles we have created? We have arrived with 8 bundles. Ideally, one should arrive with one bundle comprising all the projects. However, this was not possible because the work pace of each municipality was different, and also they wanted to have their own sayings in the tenders. Also, because of a law we have in Greece that requires that savings in street lighting should either be reinvested for further street lighting improvements or should be returned to the citizens as a city tax reduction, we could not bundle really the street lighting projects with the building projects to improve the payback period and other economic indices of the building investments. Of course, we could combine them, but we could not cherish, let's say, the results of the street lighting improvements. Finally, we created 8 bundles ranging from 1 million euros to 4.8 million euros, as you can see on the slide. Next, please. Regarding the financing schemes, we have investigated several combinations of public and private financing. The resulting financing schemes for 2 municipalities, for Alimos and the city of Ak, as you can see there, is finally a mix of public funding and private financing. The public funding comes from various sources. It is not only one source, but it comes from the Green Fund grant or regional grants funds. And there are the other 2 municipalities, Agios Dimitrios and Varivula Vouliagmeni. The financing scheme is 100% through EPC, financed by private financing. The latter are investments that include a large number of PV systems, which make the economic indices very attractive for full private financing, because in Greece, PVs yield a lot of, have a very good yield. Regarding the street lighting investments, one is financed by 70% equity and 30% EPC, and the other is by 100% debt financing, but through implemented through a 10-year EPC contract of guaranteed savings. In fact, street lighting is it can be financed 100% through an EPC contract. But in Greece, we have right now an instrument for street lighting, which offers very favorable interest rates. And EPC financing is very hard to compete with this instrument. And most municipalities prefer this instrument. But in any case, we managed to have what you see on the slide. Next, please. Some points of attention and difficulties in mixing public and private resources that we faced. So it is not an easy and straightforward exercise to mix public funding and other resources. This is because, of course, public funding depends on the concurrency of the resources and the time plan of the project. Also, there are terms and requirements imposed by each financing entity, such as subsidy caps, grants allocated to interventions as opposed to an overall energy savings target, which makes the use of the subsidies very difficult. Also, there are technical difficulties, as for example, and requirements, as for example, the energy efficiency evaluation method for the public entities, the public bodies. It is an asset methodology as opposed to real energy consumption. And so the municipalities have to take into account all the requirements and the needs resulting from the requirements imposed by the public bodies. They have to take them into account at a very early stage, since the design phase of the investments, in order to be eligible for public funding and also private financing. Next, please. I will close my part with the contribution of PRODESA so far. As I said, we created a template of a tender document for the procurement of the energy efficiency interventions design that includes terms facilitating both the award of public grants and private financing. Also, an economic assessment tool, a very easy one, that guides the formulation of the financing plan with assumptions acceptable by the financing entities. It is a very easy Excel tool that one can try many combinations of private financing, public funding, equity, until it finds the most suitable one. Also, we have tried to cooperate with the Public Consignments and Deposit and Loans Fund to provide guarantee of payments to the ESCOs during the whole energy performance contract duration. This is very important for the Greek companies, because debt financing for the Greek companies is very difficult. The interest rates are very high. So providing the ESCOs with a guarantee of payments is their requirement for requirement for debt financing. However, because it was nearly, we have succeeded in doing this, but because of the change in the elections and the hierarchy in the public fund, the deposit and loan fund, this guarantee of payment is only applied through a specific financing instrument that will be applied very soon, will be launched very soon. And it is an instrument with collecting funds from the Public Investment Fund and the European Investment Bank. But hopefully, we will succeed in having it in the near future as an instrument for all the municipal EPC projects through the development bank, and there is a project trying to achieve this task right now. Finally, we have developed templates of tender documents and contracts for the implementation of the investments with EPC and mixed financing, and more details will Argyro, my colleague, give you after me. Thank you.
So hello from my side also. I will just keep going with the presentation, and I will try to give you a little bit an insight for the ESCO market in Greece and the energy performance contracting. Next slide, please. As Eva already mentioned, the ESCO market in Greece is in an early stage. And since we are having ESCOs and energy performance contracting as one of the main pillars of our financing sources that we bring together in our projects, we had foreseen that we will have an ESCO dialogue in order to implicate all stakeholders that are involved in such a project. We don't have, as I think it was already mentioned, but I will say it again, that we don't have an EPC at the moment in public building sector. There are many companies that are registered in the official registry that is kept by our ministry, the Ministry of Energy and Environment, but only few of them have actually implemented EPC projects, and they are not in the public sector. They are in private sector such as tertiary industry. And at the public building sector, we don't have any project yet, but we have in the streetlight sector a few projects in the last few years. Next slide, please. So in the ESCO dialogue, we try to establish a communication line between all the implicated parties in order to understand their difficulties and see their point of view in how to implement EPC in the public sector. We had, beside the 7 municipalities that are partners in our project, we had input from other municipalities as well, but also, of course, the ESCO companies, and not only the ESCO companies registered, but also companies that are willing to act as ESCOs, since we are in a growing market at the moment, and of course, financial institutions. And we have implicated also in our dialogue the Directorate of Energy Policy and Energy Efficiency of the Ministry of Environment and Energy in Greece. The topics, the thematics that we discussed in the dialogue was tendering procedures, EPC model contracts, measurement, monitoring and verification methods, financing models, and the needed guarantees to proceed with such projects. We had the dialogue in 2 phases. The first dialogue was conducted in 2018, and it was a more generic dialogue, let's say, that we set all different approaches in the table and we discussed it with all the stakeholders and attained their point of view. The second dialogue was conducted in 2019, and following the advancement of the work we've done in PRODESA, we had started formulating a more specific approach of how we will proceed with our EPC projects. So we set this approach under discussion with the market and obtain their point of view. The main conclusions can be found in the PRODESA site from this procedure. Just let me highlight that in general, the market was positive seeing this approach and the way we try to implement such projects in the public sector. The guaranteed mechanism was very important, and also third-party assessment of the savings was also brought in the dialogue. And also that perhaps because we're in an early stage, this is the first step from the dominating public work contracts that we have at the moment in the public sector towards an EPC approach. This was considered as a good first step. Next slide, please. So what is the approach that we are having in our project, in PRODESA project? Because we have, as Eva said, the contracting authorities, the municipalities had done some preliminary work. They have specified the baseline, they have the energy measures and their design before initiating the procurement procedure. So taken from the options given by the public procurement law, we choose the open procedure, the one-step procedure. The type of the contract will be a mixed contract of supply services and work, depending on the intervention made in the buildings. And the award criteria will be based on the most economically advantageous tender and not on price only. But taking into account factors attributed to the technical aspects of each intervention. The same applies for street lighting projects and for replication, because we mentioned that we have some more municipalities and a replication network. We see that if some authorities, some municipalities don't have the means to perform such a preliminary work, they could go for a two-step procedure like in a competitive dialogue and leave the specification and design up to the ESCO through this procedure. Of course, we heard already in the morning session that there's the European City Facility, I think. So there are opportunities for municipalities to mature their projects. Next slide, please. And concerning the EPC model contract, we are going with a guaranteed level, the guaranteed saving model. In this contract, the ESCO guarantees to achieve a minimum level of energy performance over the duration of the project. Some key performance parameters are chosen to be measured, and based on these measurements, we determine the savings and the performance of the equipment. The energy consumption savings are expressed in kilowatt hours, but also in monetary terms using some agreed energy prices. And it is very important in our cases that the EPC makes it clear that the ESCO is responsible for ensuring that the design, construction, installation, and performance of the measures, including those specified by the municipality, will meet the standards set out in the EPC. So the ESCO is responsible for the whole project. We have fixed operational payments towards the ESCO, given that the guaranteed levels are met, meaning energy savings and rest production, because we have also PV installation. And if there is a shortfall in actual achieved savings, then the ESCO pays the difference between the guaranteed and the achieved savings to the authority. Next slide, please. So the prerequisite for a contracting authority in order to procure such a project. The first set of prerequisites comes from the public subsidy programs, because as we said, we combined regional funds or other types of public grants with the ESCO concept. So the first 4 bullets are from this subsidy programs, and this is to have clear legal ownership of the buildings and permissions documentation depicting the current status of the building. This might seem a little bit, I don't know, trivial, but in some cases, in Greece at least, it is an issue to have these administrative things straightened out from the beginning. An important other thing is the primary seismic control bulletin that the building should have, showing that it has adequate seismic capacity. And of course, the energy performance certificate, which is based on asset rating, as Eva already mentioned. But because we wanted to have the ESCO in this procurement, we had to add the energy audit that sees the real consumption of the building, the baseline consumption. The technical solution that is identified should have both, depict both the energy class upgrade based on the building code, but also the actual energy saving based on the consumption data. We had also this additional feature. Next slide, please. So for a contracting authority, for a municipality, in our case, what are the things that has to prepare before the procurement? It has to provide the baseline consumption in the procurement and set the targets that it wants to achieve in terms of energy saving and rest production, and also set minimum requirements of the monitoring and verification plan. We will see that a little bit later on the presentation. It has to set the lifetime of the contract, taking into consideration that the level of savings guaranteed should be equal or greater than the sum of all economic liabilities of the authority. And when we say economic liabilities, we mean the operational payments towards the ESCO, the loan installment perhaps, if there's a loan, and the energy invoices. So the municipality asks the tenderers to implement the specific technical solution already defined, and this will deliver an upgrade based on the building code that we have already accounted for. And as we said, the most economically advantageous tender will be promoted. And the municipality has also to set the minimum technical requirements for the equipment. We also saw that it's important to express the budget based on market prices and not listed prices for all equipment. Next slide, please. So considering the measurement, the measurement and verification plan, which is in an EPC contract, maybe the cornerstone of the contract, the municipality had to set some minimum requirements concerning some elements. For example, for the meter equipment, the metering equipment, how it will be installed, calibration and maintenance, about data gathering and screening, and the computation methods that will be used, and the acceptable estimates, and reporting, how the reporting will be done, and quality assurance, and also if there will be a need for a third-party verification of the reports, which in our cases we will choose for a third-party verification. Next slide, please. So the measurement and verification plan that we are following in the PRODESA has three, let's say, pillars. The first one, which is the energy performance certificate, comes from the part of what we said earlier, that municipalities, because they use public grants, they have to use also the asset rating building regulation. But it is something useful also because many of in the future, there will be some municipalities will have to have their buildings in D+ category. So it is important for them to know the measurements, how will upgrade their building. The second pillar is the measurement, which has to do more with the ESCO. The ESCO sees this part mainly because it is easy to see the asset rating. But when it comes to measurement of actual performance of equipment, this is what the heart of the EPC is. So we use key performance parameters to be measured, and based on them, we have the determination of savings and of performance guarantees. And third, we have the monitoring aspect, where through some building energy management systems that will be installed, the municipality will be able to remotely monitor the consumption of all its buildings, have historical trending, benchmarking, and key performance indicators. Next slide, please. And to conclude, we have, as I said, that it was also from the ESCO Dialogue an outcome, but we need an independent third party to assure the savings. So Center for Renewable Energy Sources and Saving, which is the Greek energy agency, will play this role in the first pilot projects. And next slide, please. And so what are the major outcomes? We believe that we will have the standardization of the steps and procedures. So in terms of studies to be conducted, economic appraisal, procurement, and contract. We have a solution that mixes private and public funds. And through the real case examples, we believe that the network of replicators that we have already started building will go on with refurbishments through EPC, and we will have an uptake, hopefully in Greece and in the public sector. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Eva and Argiro, for giving us a view of this inspiring project. It's not easy to be a front-runner project in your country, and you have to sort out a lot of barriers. So that's very important that you can share your experience and give confidence to the ones who will come after you that this is a feasible approach. If we have an opportunity now for a few minutes, a bit less than 10 minutes to have a questions. If you want to ask your question, please do not hesitate to do this via the chat. I don't see any question for now, so we'll leave some time for a first question, because you didn't mention it. You mentioned that the ESCO market is at pretty early stage in Greece, etc. But do you have an idea of what is the overall potential of retrofitting public buildings in Greece, and how EPC could contribute with the same type of savings that you've achieved with PRODESA? Do you have ideas of how much we could achieve if this was applied a bit more frequently in Greece?
Well, yes. To give, I don't have in terms of numbers, but we have 1,300 municipalities in Greece, and the public sector has around 22. I think the whole public sector has 22 million, thousand buildings. So there is a big potential, and this is also depicted in our National Energy and Climate Action Plan, where there are specific measures are planned for the public sector to implement refurbishment, and of course using the ESCO concept, the EPC concept. So there is a potential, and there is a lot to be done in this area.
Okay, thank you. You see that there's a yeah.
If I can add something, small information is about the 60 or 65 to 70% of the public buildings need refurbishment, and a 30% reduction is an easy potential. I mean, it is a certain potential. And can be achieved. It can be achieved quite, in quotes, easily. So yes, there is a lot. The fact is that there is a large potential.
Yeah, there are a few questions coming up from the audience, and perhaps we'll take several at the time. I think we'll take them all, and then we will share the responses between the two, because we don't have the two of you, because we don't have much time left. Robert Pernetta writes, are there plans to have the EPC project off balance sheet, so they do not count into the deficit and debt of Greece and the municipalities? So that's one first question. Another question, what are, from Kirsi Maria Forcel, I hope I'm pronouncing well the name, what are the estimated contract durations for the projects, and how do you work around the changes in building use that affect consumption? And then the last one, do ESCOs, from Robert Pernetta again, do ESCOs in Greece have difficulties to access financing for their projects? So shall I repeat the question, or is that okay?
Well,
yeah.
Start.
No.
Okay. Concerning the first question, I wanted to answer about the off-balance sheet. If we have plans about the off-balance sheet, because it's something that we had in our minds very much, because we don't want to have the deficit debt increasing, but we saw that so we took into consideration the EPC Eurostat guides that gives what is off balance and on balance sheet for an EPC contract. It was very useful, this Eurostat guidance that came out, and we had it a lot in our all of this work we performed. But at the end, because we have some other issues about the public grants that are available, or some we try to stay off balance sheet, but this is not our top priority. Our top priority is to have the investments done, and if we do it off balance, it's the best deal that we have achieved. Eva, I don't know if you want to add something to that question.
Two of them, two investments in buildings are off balance sheets. The other two are not. So it's half and half.
Do you want to comment on the other questions? Because I see time is.
I would like to say that about the last question about the ESCO, if they can get debt financing, it's very difficult. In Greece, it is very difficult. The interest rates are high. The procedure is very difficult. The banks need huge collaterals. They put a lot of requirements, which are very difficult for a company to meet. So this really impedes. It's another impeding factor for the pickup of the ESCO market right now.
To come back to the question, the second question, what are the estimated contract durations for the projects? Eva, you can perhaps add a few things about that.
Okay, there are two. One is 5 years. Another one with the ones with a lot of photovoltaics are 5 and 7 years. The other two, which do not have so many photovoltaics, it's 10 years of contract.
And do you have any issues with changes in building use that may affect consumption or not really?
It doesn't appear to have any problem because the municipalities do not want to change the use of the buildings.
Yeah. They remain schools and, you know,
Exactly.
cultural centers, etc. I see. Okay, I'll look if there is another question. Could you elaborate, so that will be the last one, on the experience learning from having 5 leading municipalities implementing projects in parallel? That's also a very good one. And how did it influence peer-to-peer learning? Was there peer-to-peer learning? And that will be the final word.
I can start and then Argiro can add a lot more. From our last conversation with the municipality, and they're showing their experience into the network of municipalities that we have established, they mentioned that this cooperation between them very important because there are some technical services and economic services in municipalities that they are a little bit more active, let's say, and so they could provide their experience and know-how to the other ones. And the average has been a little bit up than it used to be.
I see. And Ariero, do you want to comment a little bit, final word, because we're running out of time?
Okay, yes. Well, it was very an experience for us also doing all this work. And we see sometimes that little details and technicalities can be a problem. So if we have this peer-to-peer learning, we go above them and we hopefully have the outcome we all want to have an EPC actually implemented in Greece. Okay. So this is from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I see there are more questions, but we will have, unfortunately, to leave it there. And so please do not hesitate to use other opportunities in the conference to ask your question. For instance, you can take part in the virtual fair tomorrow afternoon. If you want to learn about the live program, there's the info session tomorrow afternoon also. Don't hesitate to network via this platform. You can set up one-on-one meetings. So please do contact speakers, for instance, if you have further questions. I have to close now the session, and I want to remind you that the next session will start at 2 p.m. after a short break, and that recordings will be available on the conference. And again, let me thank our wonderful speakers for this inspiring example, and good luck for the continuation of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.